The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferens.
A judge says UPS violated federal labor law for denying pay raises to those who wanted to go union. Meanwhile, we could see a strike by chip workers at Samsung. And today on the show, the Ohio Federation of Teachers and the National Labor Office of Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Welcome to the Wednesday, May 20th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. We have a total of 3 guests joining us on the show today. Our featured guest is a longtime supporter of America's Workforce. That would be Melissa Cropper. Melissa's president of the Ohio Federation of Teachers. The website you want to go to is oh.aft.org. You can also check them out on Facebook. OFT Union, real simple, OFT Union. 3 things we're going to delve in today with Melissa. Number 1 is some legislation, HB, House Bill 719, and this involves our lawmakers stripping board seats away from elected members, educators, union educators. We're talking 5 elected members gone to be replaced by political appointees. Here's the problem. This happened in the dead of night. Not enough hearings on this. So Melissa's going to get into that. Also, continued attacks on higher education. This is HB, House Bill 698, where Ohio's public colleges and universities are under attack. And this goes back to SB 1, a new law that gives politicians unprecedented influence over what is being taught in colleges and universities. And lastly, union busting at the Columbus Metropolitan Library. So Melissa has a lot on her plate today. Then we're going to go to 2 members of another sponsor here, good friends at the National Labor Office of Blue Cross and Blue Shield. We have Marilee Logue. She serves as executive director, and she'll be joined by Aaron McClune. Now, Aaron is a clinical quality senior program manager at Blue Cross Blue Shield, and she's got over 2 decades in the field as a nurse in the maternity ward. And, you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's so important that we showcase mental health conditions, which are the leading cause of pregnancy-related deaths, often by suicide or overdose. And despite what I just said, less than 20% of patients are even screened for depression or other maternal mental health conditions in both pregnancy and postpartum periods. So important. And we have to thank our friends at the National Labor Office of Blue Cross and Blue Shield for doing what they can to call attention to this. So we have Marilee Logue and Aaron McClune joining us later in the show. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. An administrative law judge at the National Labor Relations Board, Keltner Locke, has found that United Parcel Service, better known as UPS, violated federal labor law when they denied certain employees pay raises they were otherwise entitled to while the workers decided whether or not to join a union. Ordering the company to pay the employees the raises they would have received, Judge Locke found that UPS denied these employees pay raises because of the upcoming election, which resulted from their protected union activities. Changing wages or benefits in the middle of union organizing can be considered an unfair labor practice. Ironically, the situation arose after the company announced its intent to withhold raises to avoid unfair labor practice liability. But the judge ultimately found that UPS failed to provide workers the necessary assurances that they would receive the pay increases after the election and regardless of the election's outcome. Negotiations between Samsung management and its workers stalled last week ahead of a strike which is set to begin tomorrow. Now, last Friday, Samsung proposed another bargaining session about pay talks without conditions. But the South Korean union said it would only be willing to hold another session in June after the 18-day strike had concluded. With more than 45,000 workers set to participate, the strike has triggered worries within the government, rattling foreign investors and threatened global supply chains as Samsung stands to lose, listen to this, between $14 billion and almost $21 billion in operating profit during the strike. Global markets have already responded to the uncertainty, with the company losing as much as $66 billion in market value. That was last Wednesday, after announcing its failure to reach an agreement with the union, a loss that was reversed only after the prime minister committed to providing support to avert that strike. So this is certainly one to watch because, Samsung has a big hold on the chips market, and chips are just about everywhere in society today. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Melissa Cropper on behalf of the Ohio Federation of Teachers.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to Central Ohio. Welcome a longtime contributor and sponsor of America's Workforce on behalf of the Ohio Federation of Teachers. That would be the president of the Ohio Federation, Melissa Cropper, who also serves as secretary-treasurer of the Ohio AFL-CIO. Website for the teachers, oh.aft.org. Melissa, welcome back to the show. There's always something wrong happening. It seems like
That's Ohio right now. We're going to change that, though. That's how it is right now.
Yeah. I want to talk about attacks on higher ed. There's union busting going on at the Columbus Metropolitan Library. But let's talk about pensions. It's so important. Obviously, people put their money into pensions so they can live a comfortable life. And you want to make sure that money is safe and taken care of, especially by the members that put it in there in the first place. Now, tell me about House Bill 719. What's going on here?
Sure. So I had to start with giving you a little background, just a reminder to people in case we talked about this before. But back during the budget cycle, the legislature made a change to our pension system. And they did this literally at 1 a.m. in the morning during conference committee when only like 4 or 5 people were in a room, and voted it out of budget the very last day at the very last possible minute. So there's no chance for anyone to ever testify on this. And the change was they reduced by 5, I believe it is, the number of elected members who are on our pension board and increased the appointees by 4. So it greatly reduced the power of the electeds and shifted power to political appointees on our pension board. And also the same amendment that was put in also took away the ability for anyone who's an elected member to serve as chair or vice chair of the board. So basically, they took away all the teachers, all the educators' power on the STRS board. This is important because, again, as you said, it is our money that is being put into the system. I want people to know the state does not put any money into our retirement system. All the money in the system is put in by educators and the school systems. And so therefore, it is our money. It's our future that is determined by what's in there, yet they took away our ability to have any control over that money. So House Bill 719 is simply a bill that says we want to restore those seats to the State Teachers Retirement System Board, restore things how they were prior to the budget, and do things the right way. Because what they did, taking away our voices on the board, the process itself was wrong, let alone the policy. The process itself was wrong, which, by the way, we filed a lawsuit about that. That's in court right now.
Now, you mentioned these would be appointed. Who does the appointing on these seats, Melissa?
The governor has actually the ability to, I think the governor appoints a seat, and also the governor, there's an appointee from the Department of Education is on there, which is also under the control of the governor. The state treasurer, legislature. Previously, before this law, it was a joint appointee by the House and Senate of the legislature, and now they each get an appointee on the board. So they're all political appointees that are on the board. And political appointees, they also changed the law at a separate time to say that those appointees could be removed at any point in time. Previously, if you were an appointee, you got to serve your term, but they changed it so they could remove an appointee at any point in time, really increasing, again, the legislature's power over what happens on that board. Because basically, if you don't do what I want you to do on this board, I simply remove you and replace you with somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, they knew when they did this, you mentioned this happened like at 1 a.m. So when they're doing something in the late of night, they figure, well, nobody's watching. We could probably get away with it. But to your point, this is now in court. And do we have any idea when we might see some kind of decision on this or no?
We haven't actually had the actual case yet. We were successful in getting a preliminary injunction to stop the law from going into effect. And that's been in the appeals court. It hasn't gone to the Supreme Court yet. It's still in the appeals court. The actual case probably won't start until around September. But again, as of right now, the law actually has not gone into effect because we've been successful in getting that preliminary injunction and preserving our seats on the board. But again, I want people to realize, again, like, this is not just about who's sitting on that pension board. This is the legislature abusing their power. Because by Constitution, a bill is not supposed to become a law until it's had 3 hearings and people have had a chance to testify on it. And also violate a single subject ruling. Again, you're not the single subject means you're not supposed to combine a whole lot of different things into one bill. And they put this in a budget bill, and a budget bill where there are absolutely 0 appropriations that go to the State Teachers Retirement Board. So they throw it in there. They don't give anyone a chance to testify. This is a huge violation of everybody's democratic right to have a voice in laws that are passed in this state. So that's why it's important to everyone. We can't continue to allow them to get away with pushing their agenda through without allowing the public to express an opinion on it. That's been our messaging around House Bill 719. It's like, at least if you're going to do this, go back and do it the right way so that people have a chance to testify on it. If you still decide to change the composition of the board, we don't like it, but at least you followed a democratic process and heard from the people that you're impacting. But the way that they did it gave no one an opportunity to voice their opinions about this. Right now, this is still in the House. It's only had sponsored testimony, and we're pushing for Chairman Peterson to have a hearing so that we can come in and testify on this bill.
Has anybody responded saying, okay, Melissa, maybe we'll have that second hearing, or kind of crickets right now?
Well, we've had people on both sides of the aisle in that committee say, yeah, you're right, this process was wrong. We should have a hearing. But so far, that hasn't been scheduled. So we have an action out there right now for our members to call and email Chair Peterson and ask him to have this hearing, but we're running out of time. I mean, their last hearings for this session before the election, before November, is like the middle of June. That's the last scheduled session they have. So we're running out of time to have that hearing, but we're going to continue to put pressure on to have that hearing. And if they don't, we'll find another way for them to hear from our members.
Yeah. Like you said, we're trying to preserve democracy here. That's what it's all about. Let's move on to House Bill 698. I remember Senate Bill 1, which was an attack on higher education. I guess this one goes even further. Explain what's happening here.
Well, yes, this is the enforcement piece of Senate Bill 1. It's the piece that says that if you are not in compliance with Senate Bill 1, then we will hold back your state share of instruction. So the state will hold back your funding. Not only does it tie funding to that, but adds some extra requirements. So now, in order to show that you're compliant with Senate Bill 1, universities have to prove that anyone who served in what they deem some kind of DEI position before, that their role has completely changed. You have to document this to show that their role has completely changed, and then they're not doing anything that has to do with DEI anymore. It makes it easier to get rid of classes that they deem are not showing steady enrollment or increasing enrollment. It just reaches in deeper into universities and takes away their control and does it under the threat of funding. What we're finding is that a lot of our universities now, as we go into collective bargaining, are using this as a way to even further stop our collective bargaining process. They're throwing a whole lot of categories under forbidden topics under SB 1 and saying, according to Attorney General guidance, they can't collectively bargain this issue. And it's creating a whole lot of problems at the bargaining table, as well as creating a lot of compliance problems for our universities just trying to keep up with all the paperwork.
How far along are they on this legislation, HB 698?
Here's another example of how they have manipulated the system. These kind of things, you see them happen, and the things the general public doesn't see, and it gets very frustrating. They just had their first hearing on it, and typically the order would be that you have proponent testimony and then opposition testimony. That we haven't had proponent testimony at the last minute. They said, we're going to have opposition testimony. So that happened last week. We were given notification on the Friday before Mother's Day that there was going to be a hearing in the following Tuesday after Mother's Day, and testimony has to be turned in 24 hours in advance. So that's what happened last week. We still had a lot of testimony submitted, written testimony, and I went and testified. There is another hearing scheduled for it this week that will be proponent testimony. But again, this slight manipulation of let's break up the order of how things are usually done, disrupt this order so that people aren't prepared, and we don't have as many people come in and testify as we might otherwise have.
Just amazing what's going on.
It is.
That's what happens with the supermajority.
Yes. And then the chair of the committee, who happens to be his bill, Representative Young, wanted to argue with me and with a few other witnesses that our testimony couldn't be anything about Senate Bill 1, that this wasn't about Senate Bill 1, it was about House Bill 698. And we had to stand there and argue that, it's literally called like the companion to Senate Bill 1. It's in the title. Again, to stand there and try to explain, although he knows, You can't talk about 698 without talking about Senate Bill 1. We kept interrupting and trying to shut people down because he really didn't hear what people wanted to say.
You know, it's funny because when SB 1 was being debated, we heard chipping away here, chipping away there. And slowly but surely, all of a sudden you realize, hey, you don't have any rights anymore. I mean, that's exactly the process that's happening, not just in Ohio, but around the country.
Right. And to tie funding to it. I mean, that adds a whole other layer to it also. That it continues this fear factor of we're going to control you through the purse strings. So you better make sure you're super compliant with what we say, or we're going to withhold your money from you.
All right, one more topic here. This one is very, very personal to you because of your background when it comes to being a librarian. Union busting at the Columbus Metropolitan Library. It just doesn't sound right. I mean, libraries shouldn't be a place for union busting, but it's happening. How bad is it there right now?
It's really sad because we honestly thought that given who's on the board there and, again, the whole purpose of a library, et cetera, we didn't really expect union busting. We asked for neutrality, meaning just let the workers decide. Over 60% of the workers there filed for an election. Let them decide. We are already at a disadvantage because for some reason it's taking 6 months to get an election there. We filed for an election in December, and our election isn't until mid-June, which is a long time to wait for a union election. But the administration has taken advantage of this time frame to continue to put out pieces of information every week that we consider union busting, telling people why they shouldn't belong to a union, the negative impacts of being a part of a union. It was once a month, and now that we're getting within a month of the election, it's every week putting out some kind of piece of information. And they also have an email that goes out every week that says union education across the top of it. It's crazy that they're doing this, that they're trying to manipulate the situation to convince people not to be part of the union. But we continue to just organize. We still have strong support there, and we still feel confident that we're going to win this election in mid-June. We're going to hold a community rally on Sunday, June 7th at Franklin Park in Columbus. So anyone that's in the area, we'd love for you to join us Sunday, June 7th at 5:30 p.m. And this is just a great way for the community to come out and show how they support our library workers, show how they support unions. It just states to administration, the workers deserve the right to form a union. They deserve the right at least to vote to determine their future in this election.
Well, I must say this is getting some degree of media play in Central Ohio. I see there was a story recently on your NBC station there. They were talking about the union busting, outside of America's workforce. Obviously we're going to talk about it, but when you see the mainstream media starting picking up stories like this about union busting, it's pretty important. I like that. All right, boy, we got a lot here that we covered today. Too bad it's not good news, but hopefully the next segment here on America's Workforce, we'll have something that we can be happy about. Melissa Cropper, President of the Ohio Federation of Teachers, oh.aft.org. You enjoy your holiday weekend, and we'll talk to you in June, okay?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the National Labor Office of Blue Cross and Blue Shield.
This is America's Workforce. More shows available at awfradio.com.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, to loggers, and miners. Back in 1965, the Blues developed the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families, all working hard for America's working families, for the health of America. You can learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org. Founded in 1887, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters represents the employees responsible for tirelessly constructing and maintaining the national rail system in America. For more than a century, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees has proven they have what it takes to protect its members and meet the ever-changing challenges of the rail industry. Today, the BMWED continues to fight for job security, fair wages, better benefits, and safer, more modern work environments. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
Now, back to Ed Flash Ferens with America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. You know, Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, loggers, and miners. Back in 1965, the Blues developed the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families, all working hard for America's working families, for the health of America. You can learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter. You know, we are in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Month, and once again, joined by Marilee Logue, Executive Director of the National Labor Office of Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. Marilee, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having us back, Flash. As you alluded to, we are making a visit to a topic way too few people talk about, even though it affects a sizable portion of today's workforce: maternal mental health, especially the toll that undiagnosed and untreated conditions can levy on the labor community as well as the mother-to-be.
Marilee, you are so right. It's seldom a go-to topic for conversation. Why is that? What do you think?
You know, mental health generally is just tough to talk about, Flash, because it's so intangible. You can't look at it, you can't see it, you can't hear it, but you sure as heck can feel it. Particularly if a condition is weighing you down and stressing you out to the point that it affects your day-to-day life, your relationships, your family, the job you do at work, the ability to get a good night's sleep. And it's often a direct aggravator to more tangible diseases like high blood pressure, poor food digestion, attention deficit disorder, and mobility limitations. And as we've talked about before, many legitimate mental health diagnoses are also suppressed because of the stigma that people place on their conditions themselves. Imagine, though, being a young mother and still contributing member to the workforce. That comes with a whole new range of mental health challenges that need to be addressed on their own terms.
No argument there. And with more and more women becoming union members every day, many of whom are mothers too, that conversation becomes even more critical.
That's right. An estimated 68% of all mothers with children under 6 years old are in today's labor force. A good many union leaders today are putting a focus on making provisions for pregnant women and even childcare, which is fantastic. But what's not in the conversation enough is the almost unbelievable mental and physical trauma that a woman may experience, which is all too often leads to debilitating changes in the months both before and following giving birth. This period for women in the workforce is what we like to talk about today.
Marilee, I see you brought along a colleague to help put the spotlight on these maternal mental health issues that can often occur in today's workplace.
I have. Joining me today is Erin McClune. Erin is a clinical quality senior program manager at Blue Cross Blue Shield Association.
Thanks, Marilee. In my role at the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, or BCBSA, I support our national quality initiatives and Blue Cross Blue Shield plans in advancing evidence-based strategies that improve maternal health outcomes. And in my life before BCBSA, I worked as an obstetric nurse for over 20 years, not only at the bedside in labor and delivery, but also in perinatal quality. So a lot of using data-driven outcomes and evidence-based care guidelines to make sure that our patients receive the highest quality of care from their doctors and nurses. And as a side note, thank you to those nurses in the unions for continuing to empower nurses and improving the working conditions. But my background really does shape how I approach our work at BCBSA. I'm not only focused on reducing preventable harm across maternity care, but have a special interest in perinatal mental health disorders. As a clinician, I've seen so many new mothers, especially those who have experienced unexpected birth outcomes, really struggle with depression and anxiety. And it makes it really challenging to care for your newborn in addition to taking care of yourself. And I think we really need to be able to care for ourselves first if we're going to care for others well.
I agree. And I should add that women of color are disproportionately more likely to suffer through post-birth mental issues. Up to 20% of all women experience maternal mental health disorders, making it the most common complication of pregnancy and childbirth. But it's women of color that are twice as likely to suffer through them. And more concerningly, only half are as likely to receive treatment for these disorders as white women do. In the last 4 years, Blue Cross Blue Shield Association has helped accelerate making maternal health programs more accessible to new members in the labor community, though we clearly have way more work to do.
And it's really unfortunate that mental health conditions have been found to be the leading cause of pregnancy-related deaths, and it's often by suicide or overdose. Despite that, even less than 20% of patients are screened for depression or other mental health conditions during pregnancy and the postpartum period.
You know, that's some very, very sobering information there. I have to ask, though, in what form do these disorders show up? As Erin mentioned, depression seems to be a condition.
Yes, depression is prevalent among postpartum illnesses. But other all too common conditions include substance use and abuse, postpartum psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and extreme anxiety. Imagine a working young mother going through any one of those situations, let alone more than one.
I frankly can't imagine that. I have to ask, though, what are some of the risks inherent in undiagnosed and untreated perinatal mental health disorders? Erin, can you help me out on that one?
Yeah, there's inadequate prenatal care, frequent visits to the emergency room, and a higher risk of complications such as preterm birth or stillbirth. Also, there's risk for harm to self or baby, lack of bonding between parent and child, and even reduced workplace productivity. These conditions and complications have all been associated with undiagnosed or untreated maternal mental health disorders.
But aren't there maternal mental health programs that mothers-to-be and new moms can access?
There are, and it's extremely important that we in the National Labor Office here at BCBSA keep union leaders informed of all of them so that they can keep their young mothers aware of which programs exist for their plans. Some employers and funds do their best in ways to support their new mother members' mental health during their sensitive time of their life by increasing their time off from work, creating flexible scheduling options, transitioning the on-location work role to a more remote one, and getting access to virtual mental health and peer support programs. Also, I want to point out that this is just not a female issue, Flash. It's a family issue, and young mothers' family members need to be aware of this, that the young mother may need help, but she doesn't realize it. On the insurance side, there are still real barriers that can make it hard to connect and actually use in-office perinatal mental health services. One barrier is reimbursement and payment parity. Clarifying coverage and aligning reimbursement rates or perinatal mental health screening and treatment can make it easier for providers to offer these services routinely. Another challenge is that behavioral health isn't consistently integrated into maternal health. Building standard workflows like universal screening during prenatal and postpartum visits and collaborative care models helps make mental health part of the usual care instead of a separate, harder to access step. Billing and coding challenges may cause delays. Streamlined billing instructions, provider training, and standardized code sets and claims can help lower administrative obstacles. Finally, many clinicians have received specialized training and don't have a clear pathway. Expanding provider training, creating easy-to-use referral directories, and establishing rapid access pathways to therapy, psychiatry, and community supports can increase confidence and ensure patients get the right level of care. When these pieces are in place, providers are more likely to identify mental health conditions and connect new moms and new moms-to-be timely with effective treatment.
And as Marilee brought up earlier, often mothers don't feel comfortable talking about their own mental health concerns and subsequently don't reach out for help, not even to her own provider or a partner. And all because of the stigma and fear of being judged or perhaps appearing weak at work. And sadly, it may be the mother herself who doesn't recognize that she even has a genuine illness that's both treatable and not all that uncommon among new mothers in the workplace. To improve mental health and overall well-being, it is important that women feel comfortable and at ease enough to reach out to their union reps for resources that can help navigate the psychological challenges of pregnancy. They really deserve nothing less.
That's right. They deserve nothing less. And as more women enter the labor force, the more prepared unions must be to be supportive and make accessible mental health programs that help women deal with what can be a tumultuous time in their lives. Unions, of course, want their members healthy because we know healthier members make strong unions.
Amen to that. You know, this has been an illuminating dive into the mental health challenges that new mothers and mothers-to-be face in the workplace, and more specifically, how better to address them. Really glad we got a chance to explore this topic, which, as you said, doesn't get much talked about enough. But it is just so critical in today's time and labor space. So a big thanks to Marilee Logue and Aaron McClune, both from the National Labor Office of Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, for joining us this week.
It's great to be with you, Flash.
Thanks for having us on. In closing, as a working mother of 2 adult daughters, I want to bring awareness that as a country, we've made progress for opportunities for women, but just not enough. Far too often, specific health or workplace needs for women are never addressed. If we truly want to create equal opportunity for women, we all need to do our part to speak up and take action. My office and I are dedicated to supporting all American workers and their family members so they can have the healthy coverage they need when they need it. As for me and my team, we sponsor labor events, conferences, and conventions throughout the year, and you can find our full calendar at bcbs.com/national-labor-office. You can also follow us at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and on X, formerly Twitter.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up tomorrow, the News Guild with President John Schlois. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.